Here on the fourth day of the Christmas novena, we invoke the Messiah in this way. O key of David, Clavis David. O key of David and scepter of the house of Israel, who opens and no one can shut, and shuts and no one can open, come to liberate from prison those who are bound, and those that sit in darkness and in the shadow of death. Key of David. I must confess that out of all the titles of the Messiah that we hear in these days, this is the one that I find the most intriguing. Key of David. Why? Because if you go now to the end of Scripture, to the revelation that is given to John, we see Jesus himself as the one who holds the key of David. This is Revelation 3, verse 7. Jesus appears, the eternal Son appears as the one who holds, who wields the key of David. But here in these days, we invoke the Messiah, we invoke Jesus as the key itself. Very, very peculiar. All of these other images are living, animate images. They're images that are on the move. You can see clearly their consonance with the figure of a person. But here, in this day, we're dealing with an inanimate object. We're dealing, in fact, with a passive instrument that is held and wielded by others. How is that an appropriate title for the Messiah? What is it revealing to us? Go to our first invocation of the O antiphon. O key of David and scepter of the house of Israel. The answer to the question of who wields, who holds the key of David is given to us here. It's given to David. It's given to the house of Israel, which means it is given to us humans, to us sinners. The Messiah is handed over into our power. The key is given over to us, and the great question, the great drama that unfolds is, what will we do with it? When the key is placed in our hand, how will we use it? In the second invocation here, we see that the key of David is the one who opens and no one can shut, the one who shuts and no one can open. But how can that be if the key has been handed over to sinners? Is it not down to sinners now just to open and close as we like? And aren't we now worse off than we were in the beginning? The fathers of the church loved reflecting on this extraordinary paradox about deceiving the deceiver, the trick that's played, as they sometimes describe it, the trick that is played on sin itself and on Satan. Everything gets upended here, and it all has to do with this feature of the key. What happens when you take the key and you put it in the prison of the tomb, as we did? When you lock the prison doors and you put the key inside? Well, what you've done is you've placed precisely the thing that is able definitively to open up the bars of the prison inside of the prison. And now the prison bars can be unlocked from inside. When we sinners took this precious key, we took love itself, and we assigned it to the lowest place. We said, you must go to death. You must go to the end, as John puts it at the beginning of the 13th chapter of his gospel. We assigned love to the lowest place, to the most obscure, locked corner of creation. What we effectively did was provide precisely the key that was necessary to unlock the most bolted and securely locked area of the world. We provided it precisely what it needed to be unlocked. It's the great upending of everything. There is nowhere now that love cannot go. There is no place that it cannot unlock. Whatever love opens, no one can shut now. Whatever it closes definitively, our sin, the forces of evil, cannot now be unlocked. Go to this final invocation of the O antiphon, which is the petition that we make. Come, key of David, to liberate from prison those who are bound, and those that sit in darkness and the shadow of death. What does the key of David find when we fling him into prison? What does he find there? Well, he finds two situations that we hear in this antiphon. We find those who are bound and those who are sitting in darkness. Two not completely exclusive images, but two different images here. Those who are bound, those who are actively struggling against something that is stronger than they. I can't break out of these things that bind me. And then those who are not maybe decisively, actively wrangling with what they find binding them that they don't want to bind them, but those who, in a state of deeper despair, are sitting, not standing awaiting the exit, not waiting for the prison break, but sitting in darkness, in the shadows, having given up a certain amount of hope, having given up a certain amount of the battle. This is how the Lord finds us in our lives. For this prayer, I would propose to you to ask the Lord to show you, okay, Lord, you see these areas in my life in which I am actively wrangling against places in which I'm bound. You hold the key to that, unbind me. But you also perhaps see, Lord, places in my life in which I sit, in which I'm not struggling against that which binds me anymore. I've decided to sit down and find myself in a state of a certain desolation and maybe even despair in certain ways. If it's not within my own life, then maybe in the lives of people with whom I deal, the people whom I love. Some are struggling, some are actively wrangling against that which binds them, and some are seated. They're sitting in darkness and the shadow of death. We flung the key of David deep down into the prison, and that's precisely the place where the key needed to go. That is precisely the place where the key can undo that which binds us. And because he's a person, can speak to the one sitting and say, stand, stand. This is the way out, and I am the key.